no need to pull anything out right now, but on your chair there's a handout that has the recipe for the chocolate date bites and just some tips on healthy snacking. So if you didn't get one, if you're in the back, if you need them, we can pull them out. Let me just send them back there.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so I think when it comes to food and nutrition and the sort of the gut-brain axis, how do nutrients really impact our brains? And it's a very interesting science, and I think it's one that's continuing to evolve. And I think there's more that we don't know than what we know, especially when we have that connection. But a lot of the research is really looking into, and I'm sure you've heard about it, you couldn't have not, I'm sure, it's just the microbiome, the gut biome. So there's so much of a connection between all those living organisms in our gut and the impact it has on just our overall health, but certainly the connection between the gut and the mind. How much we are learning, there's a lot to learn about it, but we seem to feel that it looks like with a lot of the research that going towards certainly, and this wouldn't be, I don't think, anything new for most of us, but that whole foods diet, making sure there's certain nutrients that are showing up pretty consistently in your eating plan, and trying to minimize the refined or like ultra processed types of foods. And I'm sure this isn't new to most of you, but there is a really interesting connection where you look at the bacteria in the gut and the types of nutrients that are really needed to keep those healthy bacteria in our gut. And that's where it's key. So it's like, how do we feed them so that they thrive? And then the other bacteria that isn't quite as helpful, how do we make sure that they don't take over? So that's what we're looking at. Okay, how do we change our diet? What do we need in our diet to do that? And some of the nutrients that are in these different foods that we're going to put together to make these energy bites, we'll talk about how that kind of comes together. All right, so super, super easy. My practice, I do private practice, telehealth practice, but also culinary nutrition, so that's really my passion. So cooking and cooking well and healthy is what I really love to do. All right, so let's take a little, we'll take a peek at what's in here. 3 ingredients, so we have walnuts. You can tell I'm a Costco shopper, so I have my mega bag of walnuts. The one thing, nuts are great. So if you can eat them and are not sensitive or not allergic, the research really is pretty compelling that if we can get about a serving of nuts every day, that's probably really, really a good idea. It's not just from cardiovascular prevention, but also there seems to be, again, a little bit of a connection between the nutrients that are in nuts, some of the minerals and some of the antioxidants, but also certainly the type of fat and the health of our brain. So if you're snacking, when someone asks me what should I snack on, nuts. If you like them and you can tolerate them, make them part of your eating plan and a handful. So it's not the jar of nuts, right? It's the handful of nuts. Once a day is really the recommendation. So I'm using walnuts. There are a couple of top shelf nuts. All nuts are great, but some of my top shelf nuts, I love to see if you like them, then add them. Walnuts is probably one of my favorites. Super rich in like a plant version of omega-3 fatty acids, which is kind of nice because not many plants have that. So usually we're relying on fish and seafood. So walnuts are great. Almonds are also a really good nice source of a little bit of calcium, which is unusual in the plant world. So we pick up calcium that way. And nuts in general, some nuts more so than others, but when we look at the connection between food and sleep, is there a connection? And what we're finding that there are natural food sources of 2 particular compounds, one's an amino acid, that does help us to sleep. And tryptophan is one of them. You've heard of that. You think about it's in dairy, it's in milk. We've always heard about drinking milk before you go to bed. That can be helpful. And tryptophan is very high in nuts and seeds. The one nut and the seed that rises to the top is pumpkin seeds. So if you like those little pepita seeds, or now we're coming soon, it'll be Halloween, pumpkin seeds are really rich in tryptophan and also rich in melatonin. So there are some natural food sources of melatonin, which can be helpful. So when it comes to nuts, they all contain some melatonin as well as the fiber that's going to help fuel our gut bacteria, right? Keep them pretty happy. All right, so we have walnuts, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use dates as our sweetener, right? So rather than adding more of an added sugar, whether it's, you know, honey or maple syrup or fine. That's fine to be part of a diet. But this is a kind of a nice way to naturally sweeten something because they're so sweet. And the medjool dates are super rich and super moist and super yummy. They're just so sweet and so, some of the dates you can get that are smaller are pretty dry and they're not very good. So if you can find the medjool, that's what we're using because you kind of need this really soft, moist stickiness so these balls stick together. Because if the dates are a little too dry, then it's going to be a little hard to do that. All right, so that's going to be our natural sweeteners, and so we're pulling in fiber from the walnuts, we're pulling in protein from the walnuts, we're pulling in some really nice healthy fat from these walnuts, and then we're also picking up a decent amount of fiber from the dates. So, and one thing we know for sure, that the more fiber we can eat, the happier our gut bacteria will be. And the byproducts that they put out after they digest that fiber is something that we think there is a nice connection between the gut and the brain. All right, so that's it. And then the final ingredient is going to be cocoa powder. So again, just for some richness and some for the chocolate flavor. All right, any questions right up until this point? Okay, so it's super easy, and it's 1 cup of nuts, 1 cup of the medjool dates. And I had some dates, I had 2 packs of dates, and these I just bought at Costco, and they are so sticky that, and the other ones I had in my freezer for a while, and they were a little bit drier, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to use the stickier ones, because I think the stickier the better. So it's a cup equal portion of dates to walnuts, and then we're just gonna do a tablespoon of cocoa powder. And this is just unsweetened cocoa. Yeah. So you can get dark cocoa powder. You can get, there's different types of cocoa powder, but most of the time you'll see in the supermarket is like this Dutch processed cocoa powder. And that's because it's a little bit more mild. If you can get one cocoa powder that is not Dutch processed, that's pretty strong, very, very rich, chocolatey. If you like that, that's even better because it retains some of the compounds that are naturally in the cocoa bean. Once they Dutch process it, you lose some of that. So nutritionally, if you like the unprocessed or I don't even know how it's not alkalized cocoa, that's great. That's just a little too bitter for me, so I don't tend to use that. All right, and that's it. Now we're just gonna whirl this up. It's probably gonna be a little loud. We're gonna whirl it up. Let's see if we're connected. It's like one of those things you should test. All right, let me try them out. Let's see, let me go on the other side.
Here's one right here.
Do you want? Yeah, I know Megan had this one. I know my extension cord works. I just used it the other day. All right, let's try it. Yeah. There. And then you're just kind of pulsing it until it kind of comes together. So it's not super fine. There'll be some texture to it, but you're going to want to break it down a little bit. And that's it. And then, so I'll just show you how it looks. So you have a pretty well equal walnuts, to dates, to cocoa. All right. And if you want it really chocolatey, you can certainly add a little bit more cocoa powder to it. And my hands are clean, so I was trying to use rubber gloves, but I just can't work with them. So then and you can see it really sticks together. So you're just taking them out. This makes about 16, this size little balls. So I'm gonna make them, and then I'll pass the tray around so everybody can taste them. So what I usually do with these is I usually make a double batch, and you can make them any size you want. I mean, you can obviously make them bigger, but you can keep them in the refrigerator, and they're great just cold read from the refrigerator, and so you can just pack them and take them with you. They kind of remind me a little bit. Have a good night. Yeah, they kind of remind me a little bit of the Larabars, because Larabars are very similar. Larabars are mostly just dates, some sort of nut, and then usually spices, cinnamon, or they'll call, they always have great names for like apple pie or something. But so that's very similar. But you instead of what are they, $3.50 or $3 a bar, you can make these, and a lot less expensive. And then if you make a bunch of them, just pop them in your freezer. Just, put them in a container, just like a freezer container, and just keep them in there. And then you just pull them out when you want them and take them with you. They're great for when to go. These are great, and kids love them. Again, if there's no nut allergies involved. There are so many different ways you can make energy bites. I've seen so many recipes. Some have oats, some have beans, which I've made, and they're all really good. It's just that I love this one because there's only 3 ingredients. It's just so simple. And the idea is when you're trying to pull together, whether it's a healthy snack or not necessarily healthy, but just thinking about just the balance of nutrients. Like you hear a lot more now recently in the past couple of years about macronutrients. You hear about macronutrients and do I get my macros, and the micronutrients, which are the vitamins and minerals. And the macronutrients are really our proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So that's where we get our energy from. So when we're eating food, most food is going to be some percentage of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. And the key to satiety, and even for energy, and even with the food mood connection, particularly if once blood sugar drops, then we can start to not always feel so great, right? So how do you keep the energy high, and how do you keep yourself fueled throughout the day so you're not constantly feeling cravings, or like, oh, I just need to have something sweet, or oh, I just really need to have something, a piece of bread or whatever. And what seems to be most helpful for most of us is this balance of macronutrients, so that you're getting, when you're having something to eat like a snack, it's not just out of the bag, like popcorn, or just out of the bag pretzels, which, mostly just, carbohydrate and refined carbohydrate in that sense, except popcorn. But when you're combining the carbohydrates that have fiber, so some kind of whole grain, whether it's nuts or whether it's, some dates or wherever we're going to pull some fruits and vegetables in, or whole grains, then the fiber's there, and that's going to certainly help the gut. It's also going to help with how quickly or how not so quickly your food gets digested and then is released into the bloodstream as blood sugar. And especially if you can combine them with protein. So here we're using the nuts as our protein source. And then even better if you can combine it then with a healthy fat. And in this case, our nuts are serving as our healthy protein source and our healthy fat source. So this energy bite has all the components that you want in your meals and in your snacks. So you want some healthy carbohydrate that has the fiber in it. You want to combine it with some sort of a leaner protein that is, or if it has fat, it's like a plant-based fat rather than an animal fat, ideally. And then you're bringing in the, so you have the fat, the protein, and the carbohydrate. And that's really what you're trying to do with all your meals, right? So rather than eating, and snacks in particular, because those are the type of things that we kind of just grab and go. And if we're grabbing a donut or a muffin and we're running out the door, and that's all fine and good, but within an hour you're going to feel like you need something else to eat, most likely, even though you just had a pretty dense source of calories. It's just not going to register real well, and you're going to feel like you need more. Whereas if you might have 2 or 3 of these are going to hold you, even though it might be the same amount of energy, same amount of calories, but they're going to hold you a lot longer just because of the makeup of the macronutrients. So when you hear a lot about macros, a lot of that, some of it's just a little bit overhyped, but there is something to that when it comes to trying to create that balance, in your things. All right, I think I have enough to pass around. Let me just wash my hands. Does anybody have any questions? Anything come up? No? All right. I don't know if anyone follows, but I do have thanks, Morgan. I do every third, well, not the month of August, I'm actually taking a break, but every Thursday at 11:30, I do a Facebook Live cooking demo, and it's called One Simple Recipe, and it's basically something like this, where we're taking simple ingredients, pulling them together, creating something nice and healthy, but also that tastes really good. So I try to go on at around 11:30 every Thursday, and then the recipes are posted on our blog, or they'll be posted right on the website. So if you're around and want to check it out, but then it's, because it's Facebook Live, also it lives on our YouTube channel, so Athens Nutrition, all of our cooking demos are up there. We've been doing it for a couple of years, so there's quite a few at this point. We've got a lot of recipes and a lot of demos. But it's, the idea here is that trying to, because we're all so busy, it's like, how do we eat well without spending hours and hours in the kitchen? Because I know a lot of us don't necessarily have the time, maybe then we don't necessarily love cooking maybe as much as I love to cook, and I get that. So anyway, yeah, so check that out if you want to, if you'd like to grab one. You're so welcome. Around the filler. Yeah, aren't they good? And then and especially if you make them and you put them in the refrigerator or the freezer, they really get like a little more solid. Like they're going to be a little softer right now. Once the colder they get. Hello there, neighbors.
Oh, thank you.
Your video. All right.
I would like these frozen.
Yeah, they're great frozen. I know. They're awesome. They're great right out of the freezer. Because they're not going to get frozen, but they're going to just get really cold and they're going to get denser and chewier. Because the dates are going to get a little bit chewier. I know. They're really, one of my favorite, this actually goes back to when I used to work at Mainline Health. As a clinical dietitian there, and a friend of mine, oh my gosh, years ago, gave me this recipe, and I'm still making it. It's just one of my favorites. It's just super easy. And again, it really does mirror some of the bars that you get that are usually date-based, and then they might add some nuts to it as well, like the Lara bars. All right, 3 ingredients. Super easy.
That would be good at Christmas time too, instead of the cookie.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can probably make them more festive. Yeah, like you can do other things with them, and yeah, they really are really good. And if you have the dates, speaking of like the holidays, the one great thing about the dates, so that if you have the dates, just take the pit out, obviously, but then you can fill it with so many things. Like you can just you take the date, put the walnut in, get some good dark chocolate, stuff that in there, and then put them on a plate. And for make it more festive for the holiday, you could do pomegranate seeds. So put the pomegranate seeds on top of it. You can fill it with goat cheese. You can put a little feta cheese in there. You can fill the date. Just think, sweet, salty, that whole combination. And so dates are really fun because they themselves can be the little tool to actually fill them, and just put those on a plate as a nice little treat. And any nut works. And same with this. It doesn't have to be walnuts. I've done this with almonds. I haven't done it with almonds and walnuts. I think the only 2 that I've used, but I'm sure you could use other nuts. But those are 2 that I like to have around. So if you're going to start adding nuts to your eating plan, think about nuts as a snack, even by themselves, or just nuts maybe with a date if you really just want to combine the 2 and not even make the balls, but just do the dates and the nuts. It's an easy snack. And then keeping walnuts and almonds and maybe pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds even. The other, when we move away from nuts, hi guys, good to see you. The other thing is cherries. I just learned this actually the other day, that cherries are really naturally high in melatonin.
Oh.
Yeah, I was taking an online cooking course from actually Wise Supermarkets, which they're kind of based in central Pennsylvania. Their dietitians do this amazing free cooking classes. Like they have at least 2 or 3 a month that you can just register for. And they were doing one on sleep, and they were talking about how cherries are naturally high in melatonin. And I was like, really? And I had to look it up. I'm like, I didn't know that. So whether they're dried cherries or whether they're fresh cherries, and they were doing it because it's seasonal, and right now cherries are, you know, abundant. We can get them. So yeah. So if you might want to try that, just add that to your evening snack.
Is there a difference between Bing versus Vernier cherries?
That's a really good question.
I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, they didn't answer that. They didn't specify. They were using the Bing cherries in the recipes that they were using. They were making the smoothies out of them. But I can't imagine there would be. I would think that the melatonin, I would have to look at that, but I think it would be in probably both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was trying to, that was my next thing. I think in September I'm going to do some more things with even using dried cherries. Oh, little Betty.
Lots of opinions.
Yeah, this is Megan's friends are here with their daughter. All right, well, thanks for coming. I'll let you go. You can wander, check out the salon.